Mom raided my $3,800 savings for groceries, never paid me back.
The jar was a mason jar. Green lid. I kept it in the back of my closet behind an old shoebox because I was 12 and I thought that was a safe place. I want you to picture it. Every birthday card I got, I opened the envelope first, kept the cash, put the card in the trash. Every lawn I mowed that summer, I folded the bills and walked straight to that closet. I had a little notebook where I tracked it. I wrote down dates. I wrote down amounts. At one point I had $240 in there from a single weekend of helping my uncle clear out a storage unit. I was proud of that. Genuinely proud. By the time I was 14, that jar had $3,800 in it. Then it was empty. No broken lock. No forced entry. Just, gone. The jar was still there. The shoebox was still there. The notebook was still there. Just, no money. I went to my mom and I asked her straight. Did you take the money from my closet? She said, I borrowed it. We needed groceries. I'll pay you back. I was 14. She was my mom. I said okay. She never paid it back. Fast forward 18 years. I'm an adult now. I have my own place. My own income. My own savings, which I keep in an actual bank account because I learned that lesson young. My mom calls me about twice a month. Sometimes to catch up. Sometimes to ask for money. I've said no before. I've said yes before. I try to be fair about it. Last year I helped her cover a car repair, around $600. I didn't ask her to pay it back because I knew she wouldn't. 2 weeks ago she called and said she needed help with rent. Not a small amount, $1,400. She said she'd been short for a few months and her landlord was done waiting. I said, I can't do that right now. She said, you can. You just don't want to. I stayed quiet for a second, then I said, you still owe me $3,800 from when I was a kid. I'd like to work something out before I lend you more. Dead silence. Then she said, you're bringing that up now? After all these years? I raised you. I fed you. Do you know how much that cost me? And that's when something clicked for me, because I had heard that argument before. Not from her, but from other people talking about their own families. The way she pivoted from being wrong to making me the ungrateful one. Fast. Practiced. Like she'd done it before. I said, calmly, I know you raised me and I'm grateful for that. But that money was mine. I earned it, and you took it without asking. She said, I asked. You told me after. That's not the same thing. She hung up. Within an hour my aunt called me. Then my cousin. Then my older brother. Every single one of them said some version of the same thing. She's really hurt. You really upset her. Why would you bring up something from when you were a kid? One of them actually said, you know she struggled back then. Why are you doing this to her now? I didn't get angry. I just said, the same thing to all of them, she owes me money. I asked about it before giving her more. That's it. My brother said, she doesn't have it. I said, then we agree she can't pay me back, and she also can't expect me to keep lending her money she won't repay. He didn't have an answer for that. My mom sent me a voice message the next day. 5 minutes long. I listened to the whole thing. She talked about how hard her life was. She talked about how I've always been ungrateful. She talked about a time when I was 8 and she bought me a bike I didn't even ask for, as though that canceled a debt from 6 years later. Not once in 5 minutes did she say, I'm sorry I took your money. Not once. That was the moment I stopped second-guessing myself. 5 minutes is a long time to talk about being wronged without mentioning the thing you actually did wrong. I texted her back. Short, I love you. I'm not going to help with rent this month. I hope you find a way through it. She hasn't responded. My aunt is telling people I abandoned my mother over grocery money from 2007. My cousin thinks I'm being cold. My brother keeps texting me variations of, she's getting older, you'll regret this. Maybe they're right. But also, I have a notebook with dates and amounts. I kept it. I don't know why I kept it for 18 years, but I did. The last entry is from 2007. It says $3,800. And next to it, in my 14-year-old handwriting, it says, Mom borrowed, we'll pay back. I stopped waiting for that a long time ago. I just hadn't said it out loud until now. I didn't realize how long I'd been calling theft a loan just to keep the peace. So, am I wrong for finally saying what it actually was? My aunt called me on a Tuesday morning while I was at work. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, and I listened to it on my lunch break, standing in the parking lot with my sandwich going cold in my hand. Her exact words were, your mother is telling everyone you threatened her. That you told her you'd never speak to her again unless she paid you. People are upset. You need to fix this. I stood there for a second just processing that. Because that is not what happened. I have the text I sent her. I still have it on my phone. I love you. I'm not going to help with rent this month. I hope you find a way through it. That is the whole message. No threat. No ultimatum. I screenshot it right there in the parking lot, timestamp and everything, and I sent it to my aunt without any comment. She read it. She did not respond. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. By Thursday my brother was calling me and he was not calm this time. He said our mom had been crying to half the extended family, telling people I brought up ancient history to get out of helping her, that I was holding a grudge over nothing, that she didn't even remember the money. That last part landed differently than the others. She didn't even remember. Not, I already paid you back, or, that never happened. Just, she didn't remember. I asked my brother, does she remember telling me she'd pay it back? He said, she said she doesn't know what you're talking about. I went to my closet that night. Not the one in my childhood home, my own closet in my own apartment, and I found the notebook. I have moved 4 times since I was 14. I have thrown out furniture, boxes of clothes, old electronics. I kept the notebook. I think some part of me always knew I'd need it. I photographed every page, the dates, the amounts, the handwriting that got a little neater as the entries went on. The last line that says, "Mom borrowed, we'll pay back." I sent the photos to my brother with one message. She remembers. She just doesn't want to. He went quiet for 2 days. On Saturday, my mom called me herself. I picked up because I figured it was time to just have the conversation directly. She started talking before I could say anything. She said she had been embarrassed, that she was going through something hard back then, that she did what she had to do, and that she thought I had forgiven her years ago because I never brought it up. I said, I never brought it up because I was a kid and you were my mom and I didn't think I was allowed to. She said, that's not fair. I said, I'm not calling to fight. I'm calling to be honest. What you did hurt me. It hurt me then and it still does. And when I finally said something, instead of apologizing, you told people I threatened you. That's not something I can just move past. She said, I didn't say you threatened me. I said you were being cold. I didn't argue that. I just said, I'm going to give you some space. I'm not blocking you, I'm not cutting you off, but I'm not in a place to talk right now. She started crying, and I want to be clear about something, the crying used to work on me. Every single time, I would fold immediately. I would apologize for things I didn't do. I would convince myself I was being too hard on her. This time I just said, I'll talk to you soon, and I ended the call. That was new for me. I didn't feel good about it. I felt awful, honestly. But I didn't call back. The fallout after that call was something I wasn't ready for. My mom told my aunt I had ended the relationship. My aunt called my cousin called my brother, and by Sunday evening I had 4 separate family members texting me versions of, she's not going to be around forever, and, you're going to regret this. One of them, my mom's sister, sent me a message that said, I don't know what she did but she's still your mother and you owe her grace. I read that one twice. I owe her grace. Okay. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was being cold, but because I realized that responding was just going to keep the cycle going. Every time I explained myself, someone brought it back to my mom's feelings. Nobody asked about mine. Nobody asked what she had actually done. The second I said, she took money from me when I was a kid, the response was always some version of, but she was struggling. Like her struggle was a pass. Like my 12-year-old savings were just a resource available to her. My brother was the only one who actually texted me something different. He said, I looked at the photos. I believe you. I don't know what to say. I wrote back, you don't have to say anything. He hasn't brought it up again. I don't know what he said to my mom or if he said anything at all. But he stopped forwarding her talking points to me, and right now that is enough. The thing that shifted for me this week was small and I almost missed it. My mom has called me 6 times since Saturday. I haven't picked up, not because I hate her, but because every time I pick up I end up managing her emotions instead of my own. And I realized I have been doing that since I was 14 years old. Probably before that. She left one voicemail. She said she just wanted to hear my voice. She said she missed me. She did not mention the money, the notebook, the story she told the family, or any of it. Just, she missed me, she loves me, call when you can. I listened to it 3 times. I didn't call back. The rent situation, I found out through my brother, she ended up calling her sister and getting the money that way. So she's okay. She has a roof. I'm not worried about that part. What I'm sitting with now is something harder to name. I spent 18 years not bringing something up because I thought staying quiet was the kind thing to do. And now that I finally said something, I'm the one who blew up the family. I'm the one who caused all of this. At least that's how it looks from the outside. But I keep coming back to that notebook. The handwriting, the dates, the way 14-year-old me wrote, we'll pay back, like it was a fact, like I trusted that completely, and then just kept living with the fact that it never happened. I didn't blow anything up. I just stopped pretending there was nothing there. My mom showed up at my apartment on a Wednesday night. I did not buzz her in. She stood at the door downstairs and called me 4 times in a row, and when I didn't pick up she called my brother and told him I was ignoring her in a crisis. He texted me, she's outside your building. Can you just talk to her? Not a question, a statement, like it was already decided. I went downstairs, not because I felt I had to, but because I didn't want her standing on the street at night. I opened the lobby door and she was standing there with her coat buttoned wrong, one side higher than the other, and she looked tired in a way that made my chest hurt a little. I noticed that. I let myself notice it. And then I also noticed that she had chosen to come here unannounced instead of texting me first, because she knew I would have said not to come. I said, you should have told me you were coming. She said, you weren't picking up. I said, I know. That was intentional. She looked at me like I had said something cruel. She said, I'm your mother. You don't get to just ignore me. And right there I felt something settle in me, because that sentence told me everything about where this conversation was going to go. Not, I'm sorry for what I did. Not, I want to make this right. Just, I'm your mother, which in her mind was a card that canceled every other card on the table. I said, you can come in for a few minutes. But I'm not going to argue and I'm not changing my position. She came in. She sat on my couch. She looked around my apartment like she was cataloging it, and then she said, you're doing fine. You don't need anything from me. So I don't understand why you're punishing me. I said, I'm not punishing you. I just stopped covering for you. She said, covering for me? You told the whole family I stole from you. I said, I told my brother? He told everyone else. That's not the same thing. She started in on the same track from before. How hard things were, how she was alone, how I had a good life now and couldn't understand what it felt like to be struggling. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. And when she was done, I said, I hear you. And none of that changes what happened. She said, I need you to drop this. People are talking. And that was it. That was the thing that made it clear. She didn't come here because she was sorry. She came here because the story was spreading and she needed me to stop it. She needed me to say publicly that things were fine so the family would stop asking questions. I said, I'm not going to tell people things are fine when they're not. She stood up. She said, then I don't know what you want from me. I said, an apology would be a start. A real one, not one that ends with, but. She picked up her coat and she said, I can't believe this is who you've become. She left. I locked the door. I stood in my kitchen for a while and then I made tea I didn't drink. 2 days later, my aunt, her sister, sent me a long message. And this one was different from the others. She said she had been talking to my mom, and that my mom had told her a version of events where I had been sending her threatening messages for weeks and demanding she pay me money she didn't have. My aunt said she wanted to give me a chance to explain myself before she made any decisions about our relationship. I forwarded her the screenshot of my original text. The one that says, I love you. I'm not going to help with rent this month. I hope you find a way through it. I also sent her the photos of the notebook pages. And then I sent her the voicemail transcript I had typed out, the one my mom left saying she just missed me and wanted to hear my voice, with the date and timestamp, which was 4 days after she allegedly feared me enough to tell people I was threatening her. My aunt didn't respond that night. The next morning she sent 2 words. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just said, thank you for listening. What happened after that is the part I'm still processing. My aunt confronted my mom directly. I don't know exactly what was said, but I know it happened because my brother called me and said, what did you send her? He wasn't angry, he sounded almost confused. He said there was a big argument and my mom had called him crying and said she felt ambushed. I said, I sent her the truth. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, she's saying you're trying to destroy her reputation. I said, she made choices. I showed people evidence of those choices. That's not the same thing. He didn't argue with that. He just said, this is getting big. He wasn't wrong. By the end of that week 2 more relatives had reached out to me, not to take sides, but to ask questions. Careful ones. Had I really kept a notebook? Did I really have the dates written down? How much was it? I answered honestly every time. I didn't editorialize. I just said what happened and let people think what they wanted. The shift was strange to watch. My mom had spent weeks controlling the story. She had been the wronged party, the hurt mother, the woman her ungrateful child had turned on. And the second I started showing the actual evidence instead of just defending myself, the story changed. Not because I was trying to change it. Just because the evidence existed and it was specific and it had dates. My mom stopped calling me after the confrontation with my aunt. Completely stopped. No voicemails. No texts. No calls through my brother. Silence. And I noticed how different that silence felt compared to her calls. Her calls had always made me feel like I was bracing for something. The silence just felt like space. My aunt called me last Thursday. She said my mom had asked her to stop talking to me. She said she told my mom no. She said, and I'm repeating this as close to her exact words as I can, I'm not going to stop talking to my niece because you got caught. I didn't expect that. I actually had to sit down when she said it. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was the first time in this whole thing that someone in my family said plainly that my mom had done something wrong. Not complicated. Not understandable given the circumstances. Just wrong. My aunt said she was still going to maintain a relationship with my mom. I told her I understood that and I wasn't asking her to choose. She said she knew. She said, you've been very calm through all of this. I want you to know I see that. I didn't know how to respond to that either. I just said thank you. My mom is staying with a cousin now. She didn't renew her lease, apparently. I found out through my brother who found out through someone else. She is not homeless. She is fine. But she is no longer in her apartment and the arrangement she has now is temporary. My brother said she's looking for a place. He said it quietly, like he was waiting for me to offer something. I didn't offer anything. I have the notebook on my desk right now. I've been looking at it more than I probably should. There's something about seeing your own handwriting from when you were a kid. I was so careful about those entries. Every dollar accounted for. Every date written down. I trusted that it mattered, that it would be safe, that the person I gave my trust to would hold it carefully. She didn't, and she doesn't remember doing it, which maybe is the most honest thing she said through all of this, because I don't think she's lying about that part. I think she genuinely filed it away as something that didn't count. A resource she used, a problem she solved. The part that stays with me is that I almost filed it away the same way. My brother called me at 7 in the morning on a Friday. I was still in bed. He never calls that early. I picked up because I thought something was actually wrong, like an accident or something medical. He said, Mom posted about you. I sat up. What? He said, Facebook. She wrote a post last night. It's public. I opened Facebook, which I barely use, and I found it. She had posted at 11:47 p.m. The post was long, maybe 300 words, and it was addressed to anyone who has heard rumors about my family. She didn't use my name, but she described me clearly enough. She wrote about a child who had become cold and transactional, who was weaponizing old memories to avoid being there for her family, who had shared private matters with relatives to cause division. She wrote that she had always sacrificed everything for her kids and that she was heartbroken by the cruelty she was experiencing. There were 47 comments by the time I saw it. Most of them were her friends, women I recognized from her church group and old neighbors, saying things like, "You don't deserve this," and "Some people forget who was there for them." One person wrote, "Children can be so selfish when they get comfortable." That one had 6 likes. I read the whole thing twice. Then I put my phone face down on my bed and just sat there for a minute. My brother said, "Still on the phone, are you okay?" I said, "She made it public." He said, "I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know she was going to do that." I asked him if he had commented. He said no. I asked him if he was going to. He was quiet for too long, and I said, "It's fine. You don't have to answer that." He said, "I don't want to be in the middle of this." I said, "You're already in the middle of it. You just get to choose which direction you face." He didn't say anything else. We hung up. I called my aunt. She had already seen it. She said she had commented asking my mom to take it down and my mom had deleted her comment. My aunt said she was going to call her directly. I told her she didn't have to fight my battles and she said, "I'm not doing it for the battle. I'm doing it because she's spreading things that aren't true and I'm not going to sit quiet about it." I told her I appreciated that. I meant it. What I did next I thought about for about an hour before I did it. I wrote a comment on my mom's post. Short. I didn't attack her. I didn't call her a liar publicly. I wrote, "I love you. If anyone has questions about what actually happened, feel free to message me directly. I have documentation going back to 2007. That's it. Nothing else." Within 20 minutes she deleted the post entirely. My phone started buzzing after that. 3 of her church friends messaged me privately. 2 of them I had never spoken to directly in my life. One of them asked what I meant by documentation. I told her politely that it was a family matter and I wasn't going to discuss it publicly, but that I stood by my comment. She said okay and didn't respond again. The third one, a woman who had known my mom for over 20 years, sent me a longer message. She said she had noticed my mom seemed different lately. She said there had been a few situations at church where my mom had reframed things in ways that didn't match what others had seen. She wasn't specific, but she wasn't defending her either. She ended the message with, "I hope things get better for your family." I read that one a few times. I wasn't sure what to do with it, so I just said thank you. My mom texted me that afternoon. No greeting, just, "You had no right to comment on my post." I wrote back, "You had no right to post about me publicly. We're even." She said, "That's not how family works." I said, "I'm starting to think we have very different ideas about how family works." She didn't respond. That night I went through my phone and I looked at every interaction I had documented since this started. The screenshot of my original text. The photos of the notebook. The voicemail I transcribed. I had been doing this almost automatically, screenshotting things as they happened, saving dates, keeping a kind of running record without fully deciding to. I realized I had been doing a version of this my whole life. Writing things down, keeping receipts. Not because I planned to use them, but because some part of me had always known that my memory alone wouldn't be enough if something happened. That's a strange thing to realize about yourself. My brother texted me Saturday morning. He said my mom was telling family that I had threatened to expose her publicly, and that my comment on the post was proof. I asked him if he believed that. He said, "I saw the comment. It didn't look like a threat." I said, "It wasn't." He said, "I know." Then he said something that surprised me. He said, "She asked me to help her draft a message to send to relatives." Explaining her side, she wanted me to co-sign it. I asked him if he did. He said, "No." I told her I wasn't going to do that. That was the first time since this started that my brother did something that cost him something. Saying no to me was easy. I wasn't going to make his life difficult. Saying no to her, that was a different thing. And he did it anyway. I told him I noticed. He said, "Yeah," and changed the subject. The part I'm sitting with right now is what's coming next. My mom's cousin, who I have always been close to and who I know she trusts more than almost anyone else in the family, reached out to me this week. He said he had been watching everything unfold and he wanted to hear my side before he made up his mind. We have a call scheduled for Sunday. I don't know what she told him. I don't know how far back her version of events goes or what details she included. What I do know is that he is one of the few people in this family whose opinion actually matters to her. If he comes out of that call with a clear picture of what happened, she knows it. She knows he'll say it plainly to her face. She texted me tonight, just, "Please don't talk to him about this." I haven't responded yet. The call is in 2 days and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to tell the truth the same way I've been telling it from the start, without exaggeration, without theatrics, just what happened and when and what I have to show for it. I don't know what she's going to do when she finds out I didn't cancel it. The call with my mom's cousin lasted almost 2 hours. I had not planned for 2 hours. I sat at my kitchen table with my phone on speaker and a glass of water I kept refilling because I needed something to do with my hands. He asked me to start from the beginning. Not the beginning of the argument, but the actual beginning. The jar, the money, the notebook. I told him everything in the order it happened. I didn't editorialize. I didn't call her names or tell him how to feel about it. I just described what I had, what I found, what she said, and what happened after. He was quiet for a long time when I finished. Then he said, "She told me you were trying to extort her." I said, "I know. I have every message between us saved. You can read them if you want." He said, "Send them." I sent him the screenshots that night. The original text I sent her. Her response. My response. The voicemail transcript, the notebook photos, all of it, organized by date, in one long email. He read them. He called me back the next morning and said, "I owe you an apology." I believed her before I had the full picture. I told him I understood why. She had gotten to him first. That's how it had worked with everyone. He said he was going to talk to her directly. I told him he didn't have to do it on my behalf. He said, "I'm not doing it on your behalf. I'm doing it because she lied to me and I don't tolerate that." That conversation happened about 6 weeks ago. I know pieces of what came after it from my brother and my aunt, but not everything. What I do know is that my mom's cousin confronted her and she denied it, and then he showed her the screenshots I had sent him, and she stopped denying it. My aunt said the conversation was bad. That my mom cried and said she had been under pressure and that the family had turned against her. That she said she had made mistakes but people were being cruel. He apparently told her, plainly, that she had stolen money from her child and then lied about it to every person who asked. And that if she wanted a relationship with him going forward, she needed to stop rewriting what had happened. I don't know what she said to that. I wasn't there. What I know for certain is what happened next, because I was part of it. My mom called me 3 weeks ago. I picked up. She said, "I want to apologize." I said okay and waited. She said, "I'm sorry for taking the money. I was in a hard place and I made a wrong choice and I never made it right." I stayed quiet. She said, "I know I can't pay it back right now. But I want you to know I know what I did." I said, "Thank you for saying that." There was a pause and then she said, "Can we move past this?" And that was where I had to be honest. Not cruel, just honest. I said, "I don't know yet. You apologizing doesn't automatically mean things go back to normal. I need some time to figure out what I actually want this to look like." She said, "Okay." She didn't push. She didn't ask me to define a timeline. She just said okay. That was different from anything she had done in the months before it, and I noticed that. We haven't spoken since that call. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't blocked her. I haven't told anyone it's over. I'm just sitting with it. Deciding slowly instead of reacting fast. My brother and I are in a better place than we were 2 months ago. He apologized to me, actually. Not in a big dramatic way. He just texted me one afternoon and said, "I should have believed you faster." I'm sorry for that. I told him I appreciated it and that was that. We've had a few normal conversations since then. Not about any of this. Just regular stuff. It felt like something releasing. My aunt is the same as she's always been with me, maybe a little warmer. She checks in more often. She doesn't bring my mom up unless I do. My mom's cousin, I talk to him every couple of weeks now. We were always close but never like this. He's direct in a way I find useful. He doesn't sugarcoat things and he doesn't ask me to. My mom is still staying with her cousin temporarily. I don't know what her housing situation looks like long term. My brother said she's been applying to some income-assisted places but there's a waiting list. I don't have details beyond that. I'm not tracking her situation because it's not my responsibility to track, but I also haven't completely cut off all information. I'm somewhere in the middle, which is an uncomfortable place to be but it's an honest one. The notebook is still on my desk. I keep meaning to put it away and I don't. I look at it sometimes. Not out of anger anymore. More like, I look at it to remember that I was a careful kid. That I paid attention. That I wrote things down because I believed the details mattered. And I was right about that, even when the person I trusted most didn't agree. There's something I've been turning over for a while that I want to write down because it's been sitting in my head. When I was 14 and that money disappeared, I had 2 choices. I could have pushed harder, made noise, told other people, or I could accept her explanation, let her call it a loan, and just move forward like it was already resolved. I chose the second option. I filed it under trust and kept going. For a long time I thought that was me being mature. Being the bigger person. Not making things hard. I understand now that it wasn't maturity. It was me deciding, at 14, that keeping the peace was worth more than being right. And I kept making that decision for the next 18 years, in smaller ways, in conversations where I let things slide, in moments where I noticed something and chose not to say it. The money was $3,800. But that's not really what this was about. This was about 18 years of deciding that my discomfort was less important than her comfort. And what finally broke that pattern wasn't anger. It wasn't the family drama or the Facebook post or any of the escalation. It was just, one day, deciding to say out loud what I had known for a long time. And then not taking it back when the pressure came. I don't know if my mom and I will have a real relationship after this. I'm not closing the door, but I'm also not standing in it waiting. She knows where I am. She knows what I need. What she does with that is up to her. I kept the notebook. I'm going to keep keeping it,